So we're just delighted to have you all here today, celebrating poetry by Ukrainian authors as we keep the country of Ukraine and its citizens in our hearts and minds by celebrating its culture and literature at this tragic time of war. This program is brought to you by the Norfolk Library, and in Ukraine, almost every city, village, and district has a public library, around 15,000 in all for this country of 43 million people. Today, many of those libraries are playing vital roles in supporting the war effort, from giving families shelter during Russian bombing raids, to making camouflage nets for the military, and countering disinformation. As one library professional found out from exchanges with colleagues in Ukraine, other than the threat to themselves and their families, they fear one thing above all: the erasure of the Ukrainian people, their culture, their literature, and language. What can we do in the West? They told him that one thing we can do is keep speaking about Ukraine, keep reminding people of the culture, keep the idea of their country alive. Your attendance at today's program celebrating poetry by Ukrainian authors is one way to answer that call, and we thank you for being here today. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our three readers today: Susanna Lawrence, Daveen Verstandig, and Kelly Condra Hughes, who is reading for Lucy Mukherjee, who could not be with us today. Susanna, Daveen, and Lucy spent countless hours reading hundreds of poems by Ukrainian authors to curate this show and keep it down to about 45 minutes. And thank you so much for doing that. As I said before, we will begin with our three readers and then turn it over to the audience. And you are welcome to raise your hand if you would like to read a poem. We do have one reader who has let us know in advance that she would like to read two poems, and we welcome her to do that first, and then we will call on you and unmute. So with that, thank you all so much, and I turn it over to Susanna.
Well, thank you, Anne, and thanks again for everybody for joining us. I want to especially thank Anne and her staff here at the library for being so immediately on board with this, and thank you, Kelly, for pitching in, and thank you, Daveen, for also being enthusiastically involved. Just a word about the poems. As advertised, most of them do come from the anthology Words for War, published in 2017. It's poems in response to the 2014 Russian invasion of Crimea and the Donbass region. But a number do come from online sources as well. It's indicated at the bottom of each poem, and we just didn't have room to put in all the references to the background of each poet and translator, because there are so many. But I urge you to do a little more, to go to the anthology, which is online, and to these other sites to find out more about these wonderful writers. We heartily encourage some more of you to pitch in and join us in reading, because we want to hear your voices too. So, all right, here we go. Take only what is most important. Serhiy Zhadan, translated from Ukrainian by Verlana Tkach and Wanda Phipps. Take only what is most important. Take the letters. Take only what you can carry. Take the icons and the embroidery. Take the silver. Take the wooden crucifix and the golden replicas. Take some bread, the vegetables from the garden, then leave. We will never return again. We will never see our city again. Take all the letters, all of them, every last piece of bad news. We will never see our corner store again. We will never drink from that dry well again. We'll never see familiar faces again. We are refugees. We'll run all night. We'll run past fields of sunflowers. We will run from dogs, rest with cows. We'll scoop up water with our bare hands, sit waiting in camps, annoying the dragons of war. You will not return, and friends will never come back. There will be no smoky kitchens, no usual jobs. There will be no dreamy lights in sleepy towns, no green valleys, no suburban wastelands. The sun will be a smudge on the window of a cheap train, rushing past cholera pits covered with lime. There will be blood on women's heels, tired guards at borderlands covered with snow, a postman with empty bags shot down, a priest with a hapless smile hung by its ribs, the quiet of a cemetery, the noise of a command post, and unedited lists of the dead, so long there won't be enough time to check them for your own name. The next two poems are by a Ukrainian poet named Tarashchenko, who was born in 1814. He was a serf and yet became a Ukrainian poet, writer, artist, and a symbol of Ukrainian nationalism. His works are said to be the foundation of modern Ukrainian literature and to a large extent, the modern Ukrainian language. NN. Sun submerges mountains of charcoal, a bird hushes, the fields go mute. People revel, finding rest, but I watch, and from my chest I fly through a darkened grove to Ukraine. Flying, I fly with a poem I make up, and it seems my heart unclamps. Fields blacken and woods and peaks and stars surface in the still blue sky. Oh, stars, stars, and tears drop. Have you risen in Ukraine yet? Are brown eyes looking for you against the sky? Do they overlook? If they forgot or fell asleep, at least they won't have to hear about the life I've had to live. This next poem, also by Tarashchenko, and they're both have been translated by Daniel Moisenko, is considered right behind the Ukrainian national anthem and important as a rallying cry. Will and testament. When I die, bury me in the middle of the steppe of my Ukraine, so I can seize broad the broad back field and the Dnipro twisting, so I can hear and see it roaring, carrying thieves' blood to the ocean. Then I'll toss the fields and mountains and me and burn them all like prayers. I won't know God till then. Stash me away, then stand, split your chains and spatter the soil with blood and fury, having your body back. Now, in our vast family, the free one, the new one, don't forget to remember me in good-willed words, a word unangered, quiet. This poem is from a longer selection called The Plain Sense of Things by Anastasia Afanasieva, from the Russian, translated from the Russian by Katie Farris and Ilya Kaminsky. 1. Of simple things, whisper, whisper, not touching the ear of another, believe in another's eardrum. So February opens, the time whistles in a straw as if a child sips from a glass of sparkling water. Mouth opens before each word, and the O of the mouth is quiet with want. Wide and restrained want. 3. And the snow comes as if no one knows about us and no one needs us, and there was no breath, no failure, and no earth that takes us inside. 9. Of simple things in whisper, whisper. So gives us to our bodies time. So the hands are held in hands, the bodies drop into us. So the flame which comes from this evening, which is in our stomachs, a city where we are not yet persons and no longer a breath, us. And we want to go back to that breath, us. We will remember, us. 12. Of simple things, whisper, whisper, whisper us, time. This is an untitled poem by Katerina Kalitko, and I apologize, I left out the L in her name on the sheets. Translated from the Ukrainian by Olana Jennings and Oksana Lutsishina. One thing you need to know about this poem, in the last line, there's the word chornozem, and that refers to the extraordinarily rich soils of Ukraine that account for its great importance as a producer of wheat for the rest of the world. They won't compose any songs because the children of their children, hearing about this initiation, will jump out of their beds at 4 a.m., frightened by the echo in their spinal cords. Separate parts of death cannot form a whole. A quarter of fate or body is always missing. The map is worn at the folds. The doors of the house rust hopelessly. You are on night watch. At dawn, saliva becomes poison in every mouth. All these piles of ashes still have names, and they keep repeating their persistent calls, sharp like panicked bird shrieks, too extreme for a song about a field torn apart by a hail of bullets. About the chornozem that God will rub off in his hand afterwards. The last two poems I'm reading are both by young writer Kiva, and this one is translated from the Ukrainian by Amelia Glazer and Yulia Ilchuk. To hold a needle of silence in your mouth, to stitch your words in white thread, to whimper while drowning in spit, to keep from screaming, spitting blood, to hold the water of a language on your tongue, which leaks like a rusty bucket, to mend things that are still useful, to sew crosses on the really weak spots like bandages on the wounded in a hospital, to learn to search for the roots of a life that has yet to learn its name. And this last one by Ilya Kiva is translated by Catherine E. Young. If you close your eyes, you can hear the sea. Whether black or Azov, you can't tell immediately. A triumph of sound, the off-season, naked beaches, we breathe it in, hold it in our lungs without speaking, afraid to sing out of key. Unleashing note after note in perfect waves, the poplars swim away a little further from heaven, from poetry's idyll. Nuts falling to the ground smack their heads and cry bitterly. Next, you'll hear from Devine.
The first 4 poems that I'm going to read are by Irina Shavalova, translated by Amelia Glasner and Yulia Ilchuk. And forgive me for pronunciation or mispronunciation. The first poem is called A Bun. By the river, a bun in my hands, I pretend death doesn't exist. Spring is coming, buzzing over plum trees. Spring is coming. It's already spring in Nanjing. The columns are moving toward Kiev, military columns on the river. A bun in my hands. I pretend death doesn't exist. But death is coming, and death is buzzing over plum trees, over cherries and quince, the ruthless stinging of metal bees. Spring is coming, It's already spring in Nanjing. The columns move towards Kiev's military column. I read the news feed, cry straight into my bun. The unspeakable. Look, 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 here it lies, the unspeakable. Heavy as a loved one's dead body, long as night when they're bombing. Take the unspeakable under its blood-soaked arms, pull it, leave racks, leave tracks in the morning. May these red tracks be seen from afar. A poet can't write about war. Neither victim, nor participant, nor defender, nor observer, not outsider. So who? The war gave everyone a role. What's yours? Covering your mouth with your palm? Right, right. Miss can't hold back the tongue. Suddenly she's quiet just when it seemed precisely the time to talk. But what can you say when over there everyone everywhere is shouting, sirens screaming, smoke crackling high up, luggage, wheels squeaking, crooked mouths of shattered windows, desperately howling? She texts you. I can hear explosions close by, fighter jets flying. You don't know how to respond. Your own. At first glance, every bombed house in the photo looks like your own. Every sleeping child in the Kiev metro has the face of your daughter. The news doesn't happen to us, happens to us. The woman in the photo, desperate, palm covering her twisted, weeping mouth. I don't know this woman. I know this woman. The next two poems are by Ilya Kaminsky, translated. The next five are translated by Asenyana Maksimichuk and Max Rosinchinsky. No title. This terrorist looks like a bush. He trembles in the wind and sheds his leaves, but breath escapes from his mouth. That's quite a disadvantage for someone who wants to be a bush. This terrorist looks like snow. He is soft and white, but warm skin is a disadvantage for someone trying to look like snow. This terrorist looks like a pretty girl, smiles at me. She hopes to entice me to kiss her, to seduce me into her terrorism through carnal knowledge. She is also at a disadvantage. I prefer boys. This terrorist is riding in a hearse with a sign, mortuary services. And it's true. His services are ghoulish. He himself doesn't enjoy the business. He lies in his coffin, pale as a corpse, cold as snow, breathless as a bush. He's so perfect. He has trained his heart to stop at will at a checkpoint and accidentally stopped it forever. He'd be so perfect if you could only convince yourself he's just a terrorist, not a human being. This is called Decomposition, and I just want to say that the poem has a number of names of cities, and those names are divided up as the cities themselves have been broken. Nothing changes on the Eastern Front. Well, I've had it up to here at the moment of death. Metal gets hot and people get cold. Don't talk to me about Luhansk. It's long since turned into Hangst. Lu had been razed to the ground, to the crimson pavement. My friends are hostages and I can't reach them. I can't do Petsk to pull them out of the basements from under the rubble. Yet here you are writing poems, idly slick poems, high-minded, gilded poems, beautiful as embroidery. There's no poetry about war, just decomposition. Only letters remain, and they all make a single sound. Pervomask has been split into pervo and mask, into particles in primeval flux. War is over once again, but peace has not come. And where is my Debelasvo? No poet will be born there again, no human being. I stare into the horizon. It is narrowed into a triangle. Sunflowers dip their heads in the field, black and dried out. Like me, I have gotten so very old. Liba is just Ma. And this is by Anastasia Afanzieva. She says, we don't have the right kind of basement in our building. I had to leave. No one can hide in there. We couldn't leave for a whole week straight. Men elbowed us out. We were weaker. There was no room for us. In the past, we thought about nice furniture, home improvements and such. Now we think our basement doesn't work. It won't protect us. It'll collapse on us. It's worse than sitting outside. We dragged our mattresses and pillows onto the floor so that we could fall down as soon as it all starts. We fell down and lay there. My husband stayed behind. Someone had to stay home. Otherwise, there'd be no home to come back to. There may be nowhere to go back to anyway. He watches the apartment so that no one moves in and takes our things. He calls once a week from some high rise where he magically gets cell reception. He says a few words and hangs up. I am alive. Call back next Sunday. When a four-wheeler with a mortar passed down the street, we didn't ask, who are you? Whose side are you on? We fell down to the floor and lay there. On our way to the market, the bullets whistled over our heads. We arrived here with a single bag. There wasn't enough room for people, let alone things. She speaks as the August air enters the room. In the yard, my co-workers are gathering overripe plums. Last year, they were perfect. This time around, we missed our harvest. Now it's too late. I listen and I don't know if heaven and hell really exist. They must be separated by a journey in a minivan, packed full of people where plums ripen in silence, where people fall to the ground. And after we're experiencing these moments after death. This is When You Clean Your Weapon by Boris Humaniak. When you clean your weapon, when time and again you clean your weapon, when you rub strong smelling oils into your weapon and shield it from rain like with your own body, when you swaddle it like a baby, even though you've never swaddled a baby before. You're only 19, no baby, no wife. The weapon becomes your only kin. You and the weapon are one. When you dig trench after trench, when you dig this precious, this hateful earth by handfuls, every other handful reaches your soul. You grind this earth between your teeth. You will never have another. You climb into the earth like it's your mother's womb. You are warm and snug. You've never felt this close to anyone before. You and the earth are one. When you shoot, even when it's at night and you don't see the enemy's face, even when night hides the enemy from you and you from the enemy and embraces each of you as her own, you smell like gunpowder. Your hands, face, hair, clothing, shoes, no matter how much you wash them, smell of gunpowder, the smell of war. You smell of war. You and war are one. And the last poem is by Akasana Luciana. He asks, don't help me, help the soldiers. I don't need anything anymore, neither medicine, nor heat, nor light, nor a drink of water. The room I'm leaving is not this one, but the room of my body. They say that God doesn't exist, that the one that exists is human. But as a human, can he exist? Is his existence necessary? They say that I'm at the end of life, but I still don't understand anything. Last night, it hurt so bad that I forgot everything, even who I was. No heaven, no blessed darkness. All I saw were soldiers. I felt their thirst in my bones. Don't come to help me. Help those who still want to make children. Kelly.
The first 5 poems I will be reading are by Alexander Kavanagh. Fear is a form of the good, an angelic portion. Peter's cotton ball shadow loses consciousness. Bald, with a funny mustache, he drinks plum brandy until he finds his true self, becoming a dead man. Sparrows read the last rites, mole crickets do the honors. Horror, a symbol of love, reeks of leftovers. Like an explosive blast, join the kids in the basement. Life gets to all of us. Each one will catch a shard. Glue sticks explode in the sky. Oil tankers make us high. Was it all worth a try? Wasn't it worth it? To Tarashchenko. The day was buzzing, missing honeycombs, and the linen hung on the ropes like notes in a classical score. Guess, was it Bach or underpants? The air was handsome, advanced, indescribable, and yet it smelled like dog shit and fake IDs and the apple of sin, which rejuvenates. Shaking ash off my accent, I fell asleep in a bower by the creek. I saw my motherland alive in a dream, a free no man's dreamland. Autumn brought sunflowers that put jeans skies with fringes on. Nowadays, scumbags become poets and never come back home. I take a placebo of the prayer with the taste of Rabindranath Kapoor's. Finally, mushroom razors, pelt looking for a newly discovered throat. I drive a two-pail coupe sedan, a convertible. I am ill-tempered for that matter, which is quite understandable, taking into account current patterns. Feathered carcasses sing, the cover chanson from Zita and Gita, and evil airbag pillows cling, stuffed with angels' feathers in my two-seater. Their fingers smell of Sistine Chapel, of fresh-cut finger, of contagion and doom, in a white car, as white as a sample, indistinguishable from the red and the black. And when the word's naturalness itself vanishes, growing deathly still, the foliage ceases its rustling, and brittle, the garden plum offers no comfort. You yourself, born at the explosion's epicenter, are locked into the salt and gunpowder of corruption. The fruits of the apricot tree now dangle above you, and sour cherries, whose berries are wingless dragonflies. Like magnificent music, this garden has been exalted, and the poison, indistinguishable from glucose, has coagulated into blood, disabling your iPad. And not a single soul will dare disturb this way of life, this archaic melody, this sunset at the decline of empire. This can opener will not shred the quotation marks. The caretaker has been fired. The birds no longer tweet. And the sardines, drunk, will swallow the tomato sauce. But occasionally, having celebrated at the wake the demise of my own verses, I trudge alone from a literary soiree, and the stars are transformed into a soothsayer's tea leaves, and I resolve to spend the night sleeping in the abandoned garden. In this place, The shadows are like gaps in memory, and the sleep of the illegals is disturbed. I would give them all a good drubbing, each in turn for their lewdness, their drinking songs, their filth. But in the morning I hear, who am I? Where am I? What's going on? As sobering up they pray. To whom? He came first wearing a t-shirt inscribed, Je suis Christ, a long-haired hippie, but in this coming, he was beardless, and on his neck, flowering like a December rose, a hickey. He'd developed problems with human relations and nature. He transformed the goldfish and black bread into wine, and then changed this young wine into moonshine. Just so, a sickly infant who is not long for this world smashes a piggy bank kitty before the eyes of the crowd. Like empty talk, the streetcars clanging off to the depot sounds throw shadows, longer, colder, amorphous. But Pasternak has risen despite the weak Wi-Fi signal, bringing a spliff for the road, heroin, and some morphine. These next three poems are by Ilya Kaminsky. This first one is entitled, As Soldiers March, Alfonso covers the boy's face with a newspaper. 14 people, most of us strangers, watch Sonia kneel by Piecha, shot in the middle of the street. She picks up his spectacles shining like two coins, balances them on his nose. Observe this moment, how it convulses. Snow falls and the dogs run into the streets like medics. 14 of us watch. Sonia kisses his forehead, her shout a hole. Torn in the sky, it shimmers the park benches, porch lights. We see in Sonia's open mouth the nakedness of a whole nation. She stretches out beside the little snowman napping in the middle of the street, picking up its belly as the country runs. This poem is entitled A Cigarette. Watch. The Sanka citizens do not know they are evidence of happiness. In a time of war, each is a ripped out document of laughter. God, deaf have something to tell that not even they can hear. You will find me, God, like a dumb pigeon's beak. I am pecking every way at astonishment. If you climb a roof in the central square of a bombarded city, you will see my people and me. One neighbor leaves a cigarette. Another gives a dog a pint of sunlit beer. This poem is entitled, We Lived Happily During the War. And when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. I was in my bed. Around my bed, America was falling. Invisible house by invisible house by invisible house. I took a chair outside and watched the sun. In the 6th month of a disastrous reign in the house of money, in the street of money, in the city of money, in the country of money, our great country of money, we, forgive us, lived happily during the war.
So now we're hoping that some poets will, some readers will volunteer to join us and read a poem.
Susanna,
And can you help us with that?
yes, Susanna, do you have one poem that you would like to close with?
Well, that's at
Do you
the,
want
I
to
want
close
to
the
do
whole
that at the very
program?
end.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I believe that Joan requested to read 2 poems. And
Great.
Joan, I'm going to allow you to talk. And if you would like to introduce the 2 poems, that would be wonderful, and read them.
Oh,
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The first poem is by Otsap Shlivinsky, translated from the Ukrainian by Anton Tenzer and Tatiana Filimonova. And the title is Alina. She danced since evenings were still warm and the world was being rolled up like a carpet after a city festival, and lights sparkled above red leaves. She danced because she wanted to turn back, and she knew you couldn't resurrect things by imagining them. She danced because it's better to feel with the body how she woke up, fell asleep on the wet deck, waited for things to be loaded, how she ran after a floppy-eared dog, not wanting to leave it to them. She danced because there are no more places, stamps, return addresses, banks, municipal headquarters, no more street, water pump, half-painted fence, soap dishes, brushes. Everything is in a single moving point, so compressed as a wrist where all the blood has gathered. The second poem is by the same poet and translated by the same 2 people, but I'm going to say that again. The name of the second poem is Latifa, written by Otsap Shlivinsky, translated by Antoine Tenzer and Tatiana Filimonova. The kid asks, of course. He asks, when we will head back home. And so one time I told him, I said, our house was taken up to the sky. I don't know what I was thinking. I said, our house was so good to us, Alim, that it could not stand on earth anymore, like all other houses. And it had so much love, so many layers of love we applied to the floor, the doors, the window panes. And as soon as the old love peeled off, we would add on a new layer, even more diligently and generously. Ever brighter white and red was the love we put on. Also, ivory colored love. Although Grandpa said That's not love, just childish games. Because for love, a simple color should be enough. All of this I say to myself. And to the kid, I say, yes, you could see nothing but the sky from the windows now. And angels too. But there is no one home. Because angels are not for the living to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. Our next reader is Owen, and we will ask Owen to unmute. There you are.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, there you go. Hold on one second. Okay. You can unmute. Perfect.
Okay, 2 minutes. This is a really wonderful thing you've put together. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to read Forgive Me, Darling, I'm Not a Fighter by Mariana Savka, translated from the Ukrainian by Sibyllin Forrester and Mary Kalina with Bodan Pechenyak. Forgive me, darling, I'm not a fighter. Every time you gaze into my face, I tell you, I have a knife with willow twigs. I can weave you a basket. If you like, I can weave you a bird and plant violets in its eyes. I'm not a fighter, darling. I have a knife to prune branches on the young trees. You haven't come out to the garden for so long. The cherries are coming in. Darling, why have you gone so gray?
Thank you, Owen. I have a poem I'd like to read, and anyone else can raise their hand if they have a selection. This poem is entitled Someone Stands Between You and Death by Halina Kruk, translated from the Ukrainian by Sibyllin Forrester. Someone stands between you and death, but who knows how much more my heart can stand. Where you are, it's so important someone prays for you, even with their own words, even if they don't clasp their hands and kneel. Plucking the stems off strawberries from the garden, I recall how I scolded you when you were small for squashing the berries before they ripened. My heart whispers, Death, he hasn't ripened yet. He's still green. Nothing in his life has been sweeter than unwashed strawberries. I beg you, oh God, don't place him at the front. Please don't rain rockets down on him, oh God. I don't even know what a rocket looks like. My son, I can't picture the war, even to myself. Susanna, we need you to unmute. And I will mute. I will mute.
We do have one more person. Tina would like to read.
Great.
Hi, thank you so much for organizing this. It's just been wonderful. I'd like to share the poem by Lesya Ukrainka called Contra, Sparrow, which from Latin translates Against All Hope, I Hope, written in 1890. Thoughts away, you heavy clouds of autumn, for now springtime comes, agleam with gold. Shall thus in grief and wailing for ill fortune all the tale of my young years be told? No, I want to smile through tears and weeping, sing my songs where evil holds its sway. Hopeless, a steadfast hope forever keeping. I want to live your thoughts of grief away. Oh, poor sad fallow land, unused to tilling, I'll sow blossoms brilliant in hue. I'll sow blossoms where the frost lies chilling. I'll pour bitter tears on them as dew. And those burning tears shall melt, dissolving all that mighty crust of ice away. Maybe blossoms will come up unfolding, singing springtime too for me someday. Up the flinty steep and craggy mountain, a weighty, ponderous boulder I shall raise, and bearing this dread burden, a resounding song I'll sing, a song of your joyous praise. In the long, dark, ever viewless nighttime, not one instant shall I close my eyes. I'll seek ever for the star to guide me, she that reigns bright mistress of dark skies. Yes, I'll smile indeed through tears and weeping, sing my songs where evil holds its sway. Hopeless, a steadfast hope forever keeping, I shall live your thoughts of grief away. And that translation was by Vera Rich.
Thank you.
Thank you. I
Well,
think
that's it.
you're on, Susanna.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you again, everyone, for participating. It's been a wonderful event for us too. I just wanted to say that I know a lot of people have already given to various groups that are supporting Ukraine, but on the library website page, there's one of the website pages shows ways in which you can donate if you would like to find other places to help out. The last poem is The Return, written by Ilya Kaminsky, translated by Oksana Maksimchuk and Max Rososhinsky. We want back home, where we got our first graze, where the sky pours into windows in blue rays, where we planted a tree and raised a sun, where we built a home that grew moldy without us. But the road back blossoms with mines, needle grass and fog cover the open pits. We come back bitter, guilt-ridden, reticent. We just want our home back and a little peace. If only to go there, to breathe in the scent of mold, pulling yellowed photographs out of the family albums. We're going home where we won't grow old, parents and graves and walls waiting for us. We will walk back, even with bare feet. If we don't find our home in the place where we left it, we will build another one in the apricot tree, out of luscious clouds, out of azure ether. Thank you, everybody.
Now I am muted. Now I am unmuted. One of the pitfalls of Zoom. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you so much, Susanna, for curating this wonderful program, for Davine. We missed Lucy in absentia, but thank you, Kelly, so much for stepping in and reading the poems that Lucy suggested. And thank you, everyone, for attending today. We will have this recording posted on our website in a couple of days, and we will also send you all a copy of that. So once again, thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon again. Thanks, everyone.